Hello and welcome to the local author panel portion of Local Author Day here at the Garland County Library. We're here today in conjunction with Arts in the Park. And I just wanted to say a couple of things, then I'll get off the stage and let Paul get up here and kind of tell you about the talks that you guys will be doing. First, I wanted to say thank you for coming. Thank you to our authors and their supporters, to the public who've attended, and everybody who is just here to celebrate our local authors today. It is a very brave thing to put your words out into the world, and you've all done that. So thank you, and thank you for sharing your work with us. I also wanted to mention, if you are wanting to join a local writing community, or if you're inspired by all of these authors and want to write a story of your own, we have the Ink Hearts Fiction Writers Club meeting here. It's currently meeting on the third Saturday of every month. That may change this summer. But if you'd like to get more information about it or to register, you can email me at cemmons, CEMMONS@gclibrary.com. All right, if you have any questions, I can also see you after the event. So I'm going to turn this over to Paul, and we'll get ready to hear from all of you. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Paul Kickovine, and welcome everyone. Like Shannon said, you're all very brave for being part of this. You're about to be live streamed, and the public is going to watch you on Facebook, YouTube, and the event is recorded forever, so you'll have some promotion to share to everyone. So just one rule, you have a 3-minute time limit, and there's going to be a beep. I wouldn't say it's the most pleasant beep in the world, so don't be startled. But there's going to be a beep that goes off if you hit your time limit. So try and keep things brief, but come up here, introduce yourselves, and talk about your work, whatever you want during that time. And I'm going to introduce someone else before we turn it over to the authors. Oh yes, please be mindful of background noise since we are live streaming. But before we turn it over to you, I'm going to have Sarah Richardson come up here. She's the Executive Director for the Literacy Council of Garland County, and she wants to share a little bit with you.
Hi, thanks for being part of the literacy community in Garland County, and I'm going to be fast because you guys have important things to do. We serve adults who need to learn basic reading, math, English as a second language, computer skills, and a few other odds and ends things to do with employability or adulting. We are always needing volunteers or even just supporters in general. So if you want to know more about being involved in adult literacy in our community, you can check us out at literacycouncilgarlandcounty.org, which is our name without the or give us a call at 501-624-73230, which some of you will remember when we used to make the phone calls at 624-READ. It's that old of a phone number that's how they made it. It was 624-READ. And so I'd love to hear from you, and I wish you all the best of luck. Thanks so much.
Okay, I'm going to call you up one at a time in no particular order, starting with Cheryl Batts.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Cheryl Batts, and I am the Executive Director for Phoebe, People Helping Others Excel by Example. We started off working with young people to get them to a place where they had leadership skills. And the way we did that was to introduce them to our senior citizens, and senior citizens were talking to them. All of a sudden, we found one name kept coming up, and that was the name of the Honorable John Lee Webb. And as we began to research through the oral histories and also research through this gentleman, we found that Hot Springs had a very precious hidden treasure. I'd like to read just a little bit from the book because it makes it easier for me to stay within my 3 minutes. Mr. Webb made his first visit to Hot Springs in 1913, which was the year of the September 6, 1913 fire. The fire broke out on Church Street, a few blocks southwest of Bathhouse Road, near the Army and Navy Hospital. The fire burned southeast, away from the hospital, until the wind reversed an hour later. Much of the southern part of the city was destroyed, and you all know that information, but the damage was severe. We believe that the potential of rebuilding was seen by Mr. Webb. The community, both Negro and white, had been left with a tragedy that put everyone on a level playing field. One thing was for sure, there was an openness to all people who wanted to work, start businesses, build homes, and send their children to school. It is clear that in 1919, winds of change was making its way to Hot Springs, Arkansas. This wind had hit the United States in the form of Negroes, colored people who were educated, industrious, inventive, creative, and many had become philanthropists. The Honorable John Lee Webb, Supreme Custodian, the contractor, was such a one. He was the visionary for the historic Woodman of Union Building, also known as the National Baptist Hotel, now known as Home Harbor for senior adults here in Hot Springs. And he became a part of that wind of change. We realized in researching Mr. Webb for the book that he was involved with Dr. John Edward Eve, who was the Supreme Medical Doctor of the WO, and Dr. Ellis Albert Kendall, who is also Supreme President of WOU, which is the Woodman of Union, and Dr. Joseph Berriman. The reason I mention these doctors is because they belong to the AMA. Now, this is in 1927. They had to be extremely smart and literate to be part, during a segregated time, to be a part of the AMA. And they did take a trip to Europe in 1927, which was after a fact to this book. And it was that they went by the AMA to find out how Europe handled certain illnesses. Well, Mr. Webb had an opportunity to go because his friend, Dr. Kendall, did not go. Well, what do you do with that information? Is it over? Okay. You will find in this book, it's okay. You can reach me at 501-624-9400. And also that in this book, you will find all the information that will share with you how significant the restoration of the John Lee Webb House is. This is why we took so much time with the house, because of the information in this book. Thank you so much. Thank you for the extra seconds. God bless you.
Thank you, Ms. Batts. 3 minutes is really quick when you're up there.
Yes.
All right, next up we have Crystal Gilkey.
There's something strange going on in Shady Springs, Arkansas, and meteorologist Mercedes Lewis is determined to find out what. She just lost her job. She's struggling with her faith. This story could be the thing that gets her life back on track. Now, the people in Shady Springs believe that their pastor is the reason for this disturbance, and they're ready to vote him out. So while he's trying to keep his church family together, she's running out of time trying to find the answers. Together, they realize that their journey of faith begins with a wisp of faith. My name is Crystal Gilkey. I'm an author and an educator, and you can find more about me in my books at crystaljgilkey.com and Twitter, Instagram, and all the other places. Thank you for your time.
All right, next up we have Nancy Carlton.
Good afternoon. My book is called The Diary. Some people might pronounce it diary and they would be wrong. It's diary because the first 3 letters spell die. Okay, Margaret Ann was a 30-something-year-old woman who was very frustrated with her life. She had no real friends, so she went to a bookstore and bought a red leather blank journal to be her diary and to be her substitute friend. She started pouring her innermost thoughts into the red diary, and lo and behold, the diary talked back. It started printing messages to her. She would open up the diary where she'd been writing before, and there's words that she didn't write. And it would give her instructions, and it would give her the pathway to total happiness, which is what she wanted more than anything. Well, the only thing about the diary was you had to do everything diary told you. You had to check in with diary every day. And diary could affect your life in many, many positive ways, but never hesitate, never let anything get in your way. So when somebody's name came up in diary, she knew that person had to be eliminated or she'd never find total happiness. Anyway, so as the story goes on, you'll wonder how things are happening exactly as they are. Why is her world changing? Why is she changing? Why is she discovering new things about herself? Why are things going as they do? There's no witchcraft. There's nothing paranormal. You have to read the whole story to find out why it was happening as it did. And it's all explained at the very end, except for the very last page or so, when you're thrown one last little twist, it makes you go, wait, what? So, you need to read the diary. It's available on Amazon.com. It's $12.99 in paperback. It's $2.99 in ebook. I think you'll enjoy it. I'm Nancy Carlton. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram and several other places online. Thank you very much.
Sounds like someone set herself up for a sequel. Keeping it with the Nancy's, next up we have Nancy Smith Gibson.
I really need to speak from down here. I know it's not on you. I'm one of the few people that can hear that. That could count myself as a Hot Springs person. I was born in Oklahoma, raised in Oklahoma until I was 16, and my parents moved here, me along with them. And so, as you can tell by my age, that was a long time ago. I graduated from the old Hot Springs High School. I ended up in Arkadelphia as a number please telephone operator after having gone to college in Waco, Texas. And then my husband started being transferred around with Safeway, and we ended up in several Arkansas towns and in Greenwood, Mississippi. I mention all of these because how you live, where you've been, who you know, what you study, ends up in your books, or at least mine. Those things that happen, the people you meet, and you would be amazed at the little things in the books. I even have some of the experiences of my grandfather's sister and their move from North Georgia to Arkansas in the late 1800s, because her daughter, who was a well-known Arkansas writer, made her mother write down her memories in the 50s. But it wasn't till after I had an empty nest, that is, my 4 children were raised and gone, and I was a widow. And all my life I thought, oh, I love to read. I bet I'd like to write. And I would try, but when you have to completely write something over again, whether you handwrite it or you're on an old manual typewriter, it just was too much, and I didn't do it. But by the time we got now in the 2000s, there's such a thing called computers, and you can switch it around. You can change the words. You can switch paragraphs. That made it so much easier. And since it was just me and the dog and the cats, I could write anytime I didn't get interrupted to fix meals. So I started writing about 10 years ago. And I'm now published through 3 different publishers because of the genre. And I'd like to clear up a couple of misstatements that I hear all the time. oh, you have to have an agent. You can't get published if you don't have an agent. Well, I don't have an agent, and I've never had one, and I'm published with 3 different publishers, as I said. The big, used to be called the Big 5, but it's down to about the Big 3 now. Yes, you have to have an agent to make it with me. But the other people out in the other book publishers out there, take applications, they will read books, but the trick is to find them that publish in the genre you write in. And that is why I have with Soulmate Press, I have, I could recount them, 6 or 7 books, have another one coming out next month. And that is a romance publisher. Well, let me tell you, I have very little romance in some of that. It is a series that starts in the 1800s, takes place somewhere over the path of the Brazos River in Texas. I publish cozy mysteries, if y'all know what cozy mysteries are, with Cozy Cat Press, and I publish mystical realism, magical realism with Moonshine Cove Publishers. And I have another one of those coming out this month. So I'm varied, I write what I feel like, and I have fun doing it.
All right, thank you, Ms. Gibson. Next up, we have Jubilee Forbes.
Hi. I'm gonna read this letter I wrote here. Okay. So, hello everyone. My name is Jubilee Forbes, and I'm a local author here in Arkansas. More specifically, though, I live in Hot Springs Village, go to school in Jessieville, and spend a lot of my free time at this library. I was so excited that the library was doing another local authors day, especially because I missed out on a couple. The first time I was at this event, I was 14. I had written a book called Whim to Wow, also available at the library. It's out there on the display. And I remember feeling all the creative energy in the room the minute I walked in. At every table, there was a new perspective, a new narrative, and as I looked around, I knew I was in the right place. Today, I'm here with my poetry collection, Tropical Studio Fire Pit, and I'd like to take a minute and talk about that. My writing, of course, is influenced by other authors, poets, and artists. When I was younger, I started reading Roald Dahl's impressive collections of novels and short stories, something that definitely influenced my writing. Before I read Matilda and Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, though, I was reading about Peter Rabbit and his sisters. Beatrix Potter is another one of the authors that I grew up reading. So these are only 2 of the hundreds of authors I take inspiration from. I wanted to mention them because they contrast each other in a lot of ways. And an easy way to describe my poetry collection, at least in my opinion, is to think of it as a balance between their styles and my own. I think that, like Roald Dahl, I write about absurd things in a funny way that still makes people think about themselves and the people around them. The reflection part of reading has always been very important to my writing. On the other hand, I think that, like Beatrix Potter, I like to write about calm things like rabbits and geese that have a slightly subdued edge to them, like her stories about the rats who plotted to roll up a cat named Tom and eat him whole, the roly-poly kitten taunted by Samuel Whiskers and the dreadful Anna Maria. I think that I compare my poetry book to this balance because these poems range from the absurd Cookie Muffins, which is about an evil octopus who wants to kill baby cookie muffins, which are just when you get a muffin pan and you put cookie mix in it. That's all that is. I read that and didn't explain that. But also perhaps has political undertones to the simpler poem Gangster Cats, which I'm not sure what it's about. But that's the good thing about being a poet. You don't have to know it all because it's up to the readers it's open to interpretation. So that's all I have to say.
Okay, Robert Tominelli.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Robert Tominelli. Wrote The Seeds of Opportunity. And the book, what I've got to say about this book, it's a story based on fact. It starts 50 years ago. And it's a story about inspiration, ambition, and perseverance as well, because it's a climb up a ladder to success, and many people have experienced this success and lost it. And this is the comeback trail. It's how you have to keep persevering to get back on top again. And that's basically what this book is about. It's based on fact. And I think you'd really enjoy it if you give it a read. If you have any questions about any of this, please feel free to call me or get in touch with me, and I'll be more than happy to explain some things. Thank you very much for your time.
Next up, Mike Blight.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
A good-looking group out there. Then and now, Hot Springs, Arkansas. Let's face it, it's just a coffee table book. I'm in this room with all the authors. I put together a coffee table book. It should be on every coffee table in Garland County. It can be obtained at the Garland County Historical Society's archives at 328 Walpole Avenue. It's available at the Spa Souvenirs next door to the Ohio Club. It's also available at American Art Gallery. Yes, thank you. She's my prompt. The American Art Galleries in the 700 block. People ask me, Mike, what made you write a book on then and now? And here's the story. It's short. Our daughter went to New York City with her husband and in-laws, and she brought me back a book titled New York, Then and Now. It was black and white photos, contrasting photos from the 1890s to current photographs. I was fascinated. I showed the book to Clyde Covington, who was our president. I said, Mike, Hot Springs would be a great place for a then and now book. A great place. Well, the seed was planted. For the next 2 years, I would make copies of our best photographs, take them out with me, and spend my spare time making photographs. This book is 173 pages of then and now photographs. I was able to climb to the top of some of the tallest buildings in this town. I was able to stand in the middle of the street and make photographs. I was doing this down in front of Bathhouse Row, and the light changed. I was standing sideways, trying to keep from being hit, and a man out on the street was talking to his buddy, said, look at that old man out in the middle of the street. And the other guy said, someone get a net. Okay. Buy it, it's good. All proceeds go to benefit Garland County Historical Society.
We're glad you didn't get ran over, Mr. Blake. Next up, we have Terry Thompson.
Well, thank you all. This has been a great day. I appreciate what you both contributed to that. I'm Terry Thompson. I was a career Air Force officer, retired here in Hot Springs in 1993, and became a staff pastor at Crossgate Church, here, a local church in town, and did that for 9 years. And now I'm a Bible teacher there and an elder there. And I started about 4 years ago a series of teaching, small group at Crossgate, on Daniel, on the book of Daniel. Found it very fascinating. But I soon figured out that, you know, the 12 chapters of Daniel, there's only 6 chapters about his life. The rest of it is his prophecies. And I started digging into some historical facts and research into 6th century BC Babylon, where Daniel was, of course, exiled to, as most of you probably know. And he became number 2 in all of the Babylon Empire. Miraculous work of God in that. But what about his life? He lived 80 years, and there's only just a sparse amount in the book that he wrote, that's now in our Bibles, about his life. Well, I started really researching thoroughly, very extensively into secular history, ancient history, and just found all kinds of things. And I could not write a book about that because there was just so much there. There's a world of information about the life and times of Daniel that you're not going to find about. Now, this book, Daniel, Prophet at the King's Command, is absolutely authentic to the Bible. There's not anything in here that's not biblical, but there's a lot of things that are not in the Bible that are just amazing about Daniel and his life. You know, Daniel, when he wrote about his life in just 6 short chapters, he was exiled, captured and exiled along with a lot of other young boys, taken to Babylon to serve Nebuchadnezzar. Well, he talks about that in the Bible, and the next person is King Belshazzar. Well, there were 4 kings between Nebuchadnezzar and Belshazzar. Nothing about that, but you can dig that out of history, and it is really an intriguing story. But there's a lot more to this than just an exciting and engaging novel, which I think you'll love. But it is also a lesson in history, if you're a history buff about those life and times. It is a case study of leadership and courage. It is a deep dive into prophecies of the nations that came true to every degree hundreds of years after he lived. So his prophecies were true, came true. We know that. We can prove that. Well, now he's got one prophecy left, and that's the end times. And I'll go into that extensively on here because there's a lot going on right now, folks, that say a lot about the timeline of the end times, when this earth is going to change to another earth. Okay, so you can get this in paperback and hard copy and Kindle and audio book. It was endorsed by my company and
Mr.
several other people. That,
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. You got it.
Okay, you got to get it. Okay. 129 reviews, all good. And so, thank you.
Next up, Gloria Price.
Who did you say?
Gloria
Gloria
Price.
Price. Tricky knees. Hello, everyone. Hello. My name is Gloria, and I write children's books, which are very important. Now, I grew up from the School of Hard Knocks, and I really do believe in that children need structure. And these books are life lessons for children. This is Little Sprout. Now, Little Sprout is a little seedling that grew up to be a great big oak. He was intimidated by all the big trees in the forest. And that reminds myself of me being a minister. And when I first came into my calling and all these big wigs, I'm like, oh my goodness. But anyway, the Holy Spirit gave me that, gave me a Little Sprout. And it's about self-esteem, and it's just about embracing where you are and growing through the process. I think we all can get a lesson from that. And here's the Weasel Bitten Telltale. And this is about a mischievous monkey that was going around pranking all the other animals in the jungle. And it talks about, this is about the dangers of pranking. It can be injurious. So anyway, that's about that. And they all have glossaries as well. And this is The Color of Love, and it is about diversity. This is my first baby, and I love it because, it teaches us to embrace our own self-skin, and we're all different. God made us different, but one thing in common is our blood. We can exchange it. I've never heard of anyone going to the hospital and saying, where did that blood come from? No, we're not going to do that. We don't care because we're the human race. And I love it. This is my baby here. And the pictures here. One of my friends, Cameron, did. And he talks about two little boys that fell down and bumped their knees. And blood, they saw that they both had, the same color of blood, besides the color different of their skin colors. So this is my baby, and I'm just thankful. I'm thankful to be here today. This is my first time. I may be a little bit nervous, but you guys will see me again, and hopefully I'll have my adult books out. Watch out there. I don't know if y'all can handle that or not. Like I said, I grew up from the, School of Hard Knocks. But bye. If you got grandkids or children, here you go.
All right, thank you very much. Next up, we have Larry K. Morphew.
Thank you very much. If you hear something rumbling, it's not thunder, it's my stomach. We're late for lunch. I was in broadcasting for about 40 years. I wrote all the time, a lot of commercials, a lot of creative stuff. But after I retired, I thought, why don't I write a book? And then after I wrote that one, that was kind of my bucket list because I always wanted to write a book. This one, Country Folk, by the way, you can check it out here at the library, absolutely free, cost you nothing. But this one is family stories that have been passed down to me over the years. They're all true. Of course, in writing it, you add a lot of things to it. But it's about life in the early 1900s. It happened in Pike County. I don't know if you know where Langley is, and I was a little crossroad, close to Albert Pike, where they had the big flood a few years ago. Life was hard. My folks were poor, very, very poor. And I couldn't let their stories die. It was very important that we remember those things. I had one reviewer that said, young people need to read this to get a dose of humble. These stories are hard. They're a lot of Arkansas dialect. So if you don't know much about Arkansas dialect, it's in here. But through all the hardships, through all the hard times, through all the poverty, my mother a lot of times fed the kids. 11 kids in the family. I'm the youngest. My oldest, I'm 72 next month, and my oldest sister will be 94 in August. We've got 915 years combined living between us all. Hoping to make the Guinness Book of World Records one day. We can live long enough. But anyway, through all the hardship, through all the pain, through all the suffering, they found laughter, they found joy, they found love, they found kindness. We need more of that. So I couldn't let it die. The new one, this is a real thin book. This one is called The Willows Never Sleep. And I came up with the story because it was, this was 1938. The people, a young girl in here would sit under the weeping willows because the weeping willows is a symbol of hope, of good times, of doing away with the bad times and making your life better. It's a love story. It's a romance. It also has a very positive ending to it. But I hope that you will check these out. It's a privilege to be in the room with so many people. All of you have such talent, and I admire that greatly. And I thank you for having me here today.
And we wish your family luck on that world record. Next up, Jean Melson.
Thank you for inviting me, appreciate it. My name is Jean Nelson, but I'm a teacher. I've been a teacher since I was 16 years old. My first book was Remembering God and Reminding Others. It's based on letters that I wrote to an unknown friend to encourage her, to lift her up, and help her see good in her life again. And after I wrote it, I decided, well, if it helped her, maybe somebody else. So that's the first one. The second book is Messages Through the Ages. Both books are based on things that my parents and my grandparents taught me, how to be a better person. I grew up in a community of all of my grandparents and some of my great-grandparents, and my mother's aunts and uncles and their kids. So I had a whole community to raise me, and sometimes it took several of them to get it done. But they got me raised up, but they gave me messages that I still hear sometimes of what to do and what not to do and what to say and be careful what you don't say. But there's other messages out there if we listen. Our Bible is full of wonderful messages. Women and men in the Bible spoke things to help me be a better person, to be what God wants me to be. And that's the second book. Listening for those messages. So between the two, I'm hoping that I'll make the world a better place. I can't teach everybody. I can't teach in the schools anymore. I can't teach in the Bible camps and the Bible lessons that I've done around the world. I've been to Ukraine and Africa and across the states and taught everywhere I went. That's who I am. So I'm hoping I can still teach. I hope you can.
Next up, we have Tammy D. Thompson, no relation to the previous Thompson.
That's my brother.
Elijah drove slowly down Broad Street. Although there were lots of people walking up and down the walks, his eyes zeroed in on one person. In the middle of a group of girls was one particular girl who stood out like the brightest star in the dead of night. He didn't know what it was about her, but when he saw her smile, he almost forgot where he was and where he was going. All of a sudden, he felt a small bump came to a stop. Finally looking up after focusing on such a beauty, he had run into the car in front of him. He barely hit him, but the man was furious. Elijah jumped out and went to see if there was any damage. Luckily there wasn't, but the man's finger was about lodged up his nose as he swung it around, telling him to be careful, and he was probably too young to be driving in the first place. Then he heard that voice. "Are you okay?" Slowly turning, it was like being in one of those old black and white movies, Love at First Sight. Words wouldn't come out of his mouth, like he was frozen. I said, "Are you okay?" she said, the very one who had caught his attention and made him wreck in the first place. Yeah, I'm okay, thank you. Geneva's my name, Geneva. And land sakes, you need to watch that there driving. You could have killed somebody. What was you looking at anyway? She said. I was looking at, it don't matter anyway. Next time, be careful, she said, whirling around and moseying away, yelling out to her, Elijah. She turned and squinted eyes all, what? I'm Elijah, he announced, as if she asked what his name was in the first place. So, this is Geneva's Cross. I'm Tammy D. Thompson, and I'm a Christian fiction author. In this story, I was inspired by an incredible lady. Would you all like to meet her?
Yes.
Geneva, come on. She is the most incredible, spiritual, godly, crazy, unbelievable woman I've ever met in my life. She taught me from the minute I met her faith, and she touches everybody that she meets.
Gonna make me cry.
But let me tell you what, Geneva's Cross, and it's going to be a series. The next book is Geneva's Promise, will be out later in the summer. This series is meant to spread a light in a dark place, and you guys know we're in a dark place right now in this world. And, you know, to be able to have characters that can change lives, and when you run across somebody, if you can make a difference in their life and you can do it, do it. That's what she does. That's what she's helped me to do. And I want Geneva's series, Geneva's Cross, to do that. My logo, my motto for my life in this book is, my mom just went blank.
Yeah. It's time anyway.
I know it's time. I think you guys, and anybody can go to tammydthompson.com for more information. I love everybody. Spread the word, spread the light with Geneva's Cross.
Next up is Joe Paul Van Haverbeek. I pronounced that right?
Van Haverbeek, very well done. This is a little different mood thing here, but anyway, hello, I'm Joe Paul Van Haverbeek. I'd like to thank the Garland County Library for inviting me. There's a validation of allowing my books to occupy their shelves, but they now reside between the likes of Tolkien and Vonnegut, not bad company. The library is where, at least for me, books become real, a passage that requires vetting before allowing entry. My high school library is where I found reading by way of 2 study halls my senior year, a quiet zone where shenanigans don't play well. After a few weeks of trying to sleep while feigning consciousness, a mild whiplash developed, some inner ear thing that jerked me awake when my head tilted greater than a few degrees from plumb. So I took to wandering the bookshelves, mindlessly reading the random spine. Even a blind pig finds the occasional acorn. Mine was in the science fiction section. The Time Machine by H.G. Wells caught my eye, its vertical title kindling my curiosity. As it slid from its niche, the picture on the cover created a need to find out what was inside. Its reading led me to Jules Verne, Robert Heinlein, Ray Bradbury, Andre Norton, and a slew of others, each drawing me into their extraordinary worlds. It was some cosmic ticket that got punched for a reading journey I was now on. A pleasant one for the better part, with only a few plot holes and dead ends along the way. A fun ride that lasted 45 years, but ended when I began focusing my energy on writing. In order to craft a book, it's necessary to analyze and understand the means. A grasp of its makeup essential. Reading engages our cognitive abilities, where you're translating letters to words, words to sentences, and sentences into complete thoughts, triggering synapse. A gathering of knowledge through osmosis. The mind tying it to receptors for later use. Reading is a gathering of vocabulary, recognizing the pearls and gates in a story, learning structure and how the layering of chapters set up the ending like a 3-act play. There's a directional hypothesis on how reading affects writing and vice versa. A dynamism generated like a literary Tesla called building an energy until the gap arcs and they begin to feed each other. I've read over 2,000 novels and short story collections that reside in my library. A plethora of themes, plots, and characterizations to draw from. Their reflections in the books I've written. My hope is, in the future, some kids stuck with a study hall will wander upon my array of vertical spines. A title catches their eye. They slide it from its niche and are captivated by the cover, creating a need to find out what's inside. A cosmic ticket punched on a young person's new reading journey. Thank you. You can find my books on Kindle. I'm Joe Paul McHattie.
Next up is Louis Clemens. Louis Clement. Louis Clement? Going once, going twice. All right. Moving on to Janice Percival.
I'm just thankful I'm not the last one. My name is Janice Percival. You can find me on the internet, different places, LinkedIn and Facebook, and I have a website. I'm an Arkansas historian. Actually, before I was an Arkansas historian, I wrote quite a bit of fiction. And then, of course, after becoming a historian, I started writing a lot of nonfiction. And then as I was running around the state with nonfiction, I had a lot of, and my nonfiction, the first book I did was based on my master's thesis, and it had to do with the Ouachita Springs region, hot springs in the surrounding area. I had a lot of people in the bookstores started asking me, why don't you write historical fiction? And so just to see if I could do it, and what I chose to do for like middle grade. And although I didn't even know the term then, I just did fifth graders. I thought that would be good. So I thought, who better than a historian to at least get the history right? So I set about to write Three Strangers Come to Call. And it deals with an 11-year-old girl. She lives in a boarding house with her grandparents, her cousin Henrietta, and her uncle. And the plot line is that there are three strangers. Each one has a gift to give the grandfather. And one of them is Stephen Crane, who wrote Red Badge of Courage, who was actually here first week in March 1895. So things happened once this was published, and I had been doing book signings. It was showcased in the Arkansas Literacy Festival. Butler Center did lesson plans for it, and I was asked to join the WITS program, which is Writers in the School. It's a great program. So as I was doing all that, people were reading it, and they started asking me, what happens next? And I didn't know, and they were wanting to know when the sequel was coming out, and I hadn't. So I had to go see Liz again in the Historical Society, Garland County Historical Society. Wonderful records there, easy to go in and find out what did happen, and there was a lot of things happening. 1895. Did I say 94 a minute ago? It was 1895. So I came away with a couple more storylines. And so then I wrote Cedar Glades Express, and Mr. Archibald, who has Ouachita Life, he published it for me. And then I started work on Elderberry Summer, and then life happened. And so a few years later, and I just now finished Elderberry Summer. And Mr. Archibald and I both agree I need to go to a larger publishing house, and Nancy over there gave some good pointers on that. But I'm enjoying it, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Lucinda Ferguson Show.
I am Lucinda, and I'm happy to be here. I thank you all. My publisher is here, Rana Finn. And also, my husband, thank you. Thanks to the library. We are all grateful to be here today. When I first released this book, it was January 2020. Yeah, that's good, because things were falling apart. I just heard that bump in the audience. Little did I realize it was going to be a rough year, a mind-changing year due to the COVID-19 pandemic. It was time for the world to breathe a little, and so I started writing, and the book flowed with the theme of when you're having trouble, no matter what the name is called, you can be lifted up from it. So I start with the seasons of Christmas and the holidays. That was 2019, and they had hope in this world for a good year in 2020. They called it, there's a vision. Can't we not just laugh at that? Look, hello.
It's your hat rubbing against the mic.
Oh, so sorry. So, no one expected it would be so difficult. Therefore, with that in mind, I was compelled to produce a second edition of my first book and change a lot of things in it due to this global pandemic. My two books, I have two here. Thank you, those that came by to see me. In these books, you'll notice the first one is Messages from the Front Porch, 2020, Rethought. Second book, there we go again, 2020. This is 2021. Now it's the back porch, but it's messages, and I've noticed a few people have talked about that, receiving messages. And that is Rethought in 2021. I have had the privilege of sharing this book in another book signing a year ago. Some have come, my thoughts have come from speaking engagements around the country. Others have come from requests for healing. Thank you so much. I think that does it.
Thank you. Next up, we have Dr. Ben Wright.
Having a little bit of trouble. I had a rather bad accident a few weeks ago. I flipped over my truck at 75 miles an hour and smashed it to pieces, and I survived. My name is Ben, and I am so pleased and so honored to be here. I have been writing down all these notes and thinking, well, usually I start my classes by saying, well, if you ever want to be a Zen master, you must answer the question, who are you? Don't try this at home alone. Or I thought, from the tendere e belle, de plato domato. No, that's the wrong. Or it could be, I had a dog and his name was Blue, and I'd say, Blue, you're a good dog, you. Or what should I tell you about myself? I have been trying to find out who I am. The book that I'm most pleased with is called Duende. And Duende, if you ask a Mexican person, they'll say it's a gremlin who plays tricks on you. If you ask a Spaniard, they'll say, oh, it's the finest moment of spiritual awakening. It is the epiphany of the soul. Well, I received on the same day at university back east my degree as honors English, Bachelor of Arts, and then took off the robes and had a white uniform underneath with shoulder boards, and was given a sword and was told I was a member of the United States Navy, an officer. And it was almost like receiving a knighthood. Well, I have wanted to receive that knighthood, that ordination, that ennobling from my quest, my crusade, my pilgrimage. The film I made was called Ben Wright's Pilgrimage. It's about my working in prisons for the last 62 years. About the same time I got that sword, I became a courts martial officer. I take care of people coming out of prisons now. I provided the first home or refuge for women escaping human trafficking here in Hot Springs. The last film I did, The Pilgrimage of Ben Wright, was refused by the film festival. It was considered too, well, grim, but it's the truth. It's what I do. And I help other people because that way I'll find out if I have any value myself. It's by giving. It's like giving. I used to walk into places in England and start singing, "Your love's like a faucet, you just turn it off and on. Will it run free for anybody but me? Upon your permit, baby, I want to get." And sometimes I help a Lord Longford in the House of Lords deliver the first appeal on behalf of the Tibetan people. And afterwards, I started singing the Lovesick Blues in the rotunda. I just don't know quite what to do except to say, I like to have a good time. I had a wonderful time today. I am writing books about how to be a happy person. Thank you.
Next up, we have B. Lee.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to read from this paper because I don't want to forget any of this. So anyway, I'm here at the Garland County Library in Hot Springs, and I really appreciate the opportunity to share my book with all the other fellow authors. We have a lot of talent here in Hot Springs. If you would like to pick up something that you can't put down, may I suggest that you pick up the fictional book, The Life and Times. I don't have a book with me, but my t-shirt is the same as the cover. The Life and Times of a Black Garage Door Guy by B. Lee. Excuse me. It's $28 for hardcover, $18 for softcover. Tax included. The gist of the book is a garage door guy calls his mother at the end of his busy, sometimes intriguing day, and shares it with her on his way home from work. When his mother encourages him to write a book, he suggests that she do so because it's just not my thing, Mom. If you want to do it, you have my permission to use whatever you want out of what I'm telling you. Voila, the book. But this is going to be a fictional book, but it has some nuances, a soupçon of real life. So, I'm sorry. I thank God for this rare opportunity, and I acknowledge the super supportive people who continue to encourage me during my literary quest. My beloved husband, Rufus Sr., my 4 generous children, and my little sister. And my few great friends who stuck with me through thick and thin. I thank you all. I'm B. Lee.
Dr. Liz Battil.
Hi, I'm Dr. Elizabeth Ty, and that's my pseudonym. I am still a doctor, but my name is Lisa Bates. I wanted to tell you a little bit about my first book, which is Life Launch: Surviving the Storms of Physical and Sexual Abuse. And it is a memoir, but memoir kind of has a little bit more of a positive tone. So it's more like an autobiography. But anyway, my goal for writing the book was originally basically to get my struggles, my story out there. It was kind of originally motivated by the Me Too movement, and it was really going crazy in 2019. And I thought, when we were kids, you know, when we wanted to add ourselves to the list, we would say like Me 3, Me 4. So I originally thought, you know, like this is going to be like Me 3 was the title of my book, because there were all these famous people going out there telling their stories about abuse and their life struggles and how they recovered from it. And I thought, you know, there's so many of us. I considered myself a normal, average American female. And I thought, well, shoot, if I have had all these experiences, which I counted, when I sat down and counted them all up, like literally 35 different types of traumas in my life, and a lot of it happened pretty earlier on. And I thought, well, geez, that doesn't sound like a normal experience, really. But there's got to be other people like me. And I thought, you know, where's our voice? And why can't we get our voice out? So my book is really no holds barred. It's another reason why I use the pseudonym, because professionally I have worked in the medical field and in education, public life. And there's still such a social stigma surrounding abuse and suicide. And I've had my own struggles with suicidal ideation and as a teenager, and then addiction as well, and so on and so forth. But what the ultimate goal is to reach anybody else. And my late husband, they ask you about your pivotal moment. My third husband, who's the father of my only child, he ended his own life by suicide when our son was about 3. And over those next 10 years, I heard the word hope spoken here tonight a few times today. And I used to be a very hopeful person before that happened, and then I realized that I lost all hope. And it took me 10 years to kind of get back on track again, which was a couple of years before I wrote the book. And so I decided to just share in my book, not just about the bad stuff, but about what were the saving graces during the times that I was 15, 16, 17 years old. So anyway, you can find out more about me in the book at my website, drlizlifelaunch.com. Thank you very much.
Now we'll have Carl Ford.
Good afternoon. My name is Carl Ford. I'm the former Assistant Secretary of State for Intelligence and Research. I'd like to start by thanking the library for giving me the opportunity to meet with so many fascinating people this morning. Going around to the various authors and talking to them about their books was quite inspiring. My book is not a tabletop book, but you might use it as a paperweight. The name of the book is Tilting at Windmills: My Tug of War Between Intelligence and Policy. I spent most of my career as an intelligence analyst. I also then had the opportunity to be a policymaker in the second Bush administration, or I'm sorry, first Bush administration. This is a memoir about how a young 17-year-old kid from Hot Springs, Arkansas, going out into the world, never imagined how many interesting people that I would run into, how many opportunities I would have to work with great people. I mean, it's not so much me, but the people I worked for were very great. And also the opportunity to find mentors to show me the way about how I wanted to be a leader, how I wanted to run an intelligence organization like I did at the end of my career, INR. The book talks about these people. I tell stories that no one has ever heard about very important people. Like one of my mentors was Senator John Glenn of Ohio, a Democrat. And he was the astronaut, very famous celebrity. I worked for him for about 6 years, and he was almost like an uncle. And he carried me around the world with him. I was like a fly on the wall at these various meetings with Menachem Begin, with Deng Xiaoping, various King Hussein of Jordan. In fact, my favorite story of John Glenn, his family would probably be upset at me telling it on Facebook, but we went to have lunch with the King of Jordan, and King left briefly and took all of his followers with him, and Senator Glenn and I were left at this table for a king, and I, as an Arkansas boy, was looking at this golden goblet thinking, I wonder if I could get that in my luggage. And all of a sudden, here is this hero, a magnificent man, goes, Carl, Carl. I look over, and he's taken a golden plate and put it down on his hands. And I said, you better get that out very, very quickly. And he did. We saved, there was not an international incident. My book is Tilting at Windmills. It's on Amazon. I hope you will find it interesting to read as much as interesting as I had living this book. Thank you very much.
I know everyone's probably getting hungry and restless, but we only have 4 left. So 3 left apparently. All right, Jack Harper.
Good afternoon, I'm Chap Harper, and I'm going to read all these books to you. My books, I love movies, I love action movies, and so they're all, to me, when I wrote them, they were going to be a movie at some point in time. That hadn't happened yet, but maybe it will. First book I want to talk about is Once Upon a Reef. And I owned property for a while in the Dominican Republic, and I was over there visiting, and I saw this big limo pull up, and these people got out in military uniforms, and they were guarding some guy. And I asked, I said, what was this, who was this guy? And it was somebody who had helped in the assassination of Rafael Trujillo in like 1961, I think is when he got assassinated. Anyway, I asked around, and they said, well, you know, he helped, kill the dictator who was there. And studying it a little bit, I found out that he had stole billions of dollars from the people in the Dominican Republic, and they hadn't found most of it. And I thought, ooh, this is a story. So I didn't take much to come up with some more plots, and using kind of the history of the Dominican Republic during this time that he was a dictator was a great way to start. So, but the book was a little thick. It was 161,000 words, which if you're trying to find a publisher for the first time, that ain't the amount you have. Try about 70, 80, 90,000, something like that. So anyway, that was my first one I wrote. And then the follow-up to that was Once Upon the Congo. did a lot of research on pygmies and stuff like that in the Congo, and I moved this story, the first story, ended with them thinking about going to Africa. This is when they actually do go to Africa. And it starts out with Stanley's expedition across the Congo in the 1880s. And they found a quarry, a diamond quarry. They didn't know they had it at that time, but they had an old ore sample that got actually passed along many years later. And they went in and found the diamonds. My next book was Beer Bait and Ammo. And for those of you that live in Hot Springs, it's based here. It's fictional, but right after Katrina, a lot of crime moved up into different cities. Houston got most of it, I guess. We got some of it. But in this one, they were running guns and prostitutions and the whole thing. And the deputy sheriff in this book is Lester McFarland. So anyway, and there's all of these books are here in the library. You can
I would remind everyone to be careful about hitting the mic, but we're a little late for that.
It woke us up.
All right, Dr. Sam Taggart.
My dear wife always says, show them the book. Always show them the book, okay? My name is Sam Taggart. I was a family physician for 40 years, retired about 6 or 8 years ago. I've been writing since I was 17. I was writing a book on public health in Arkansas back in 2012, and a good friend of mine, mentor, Dr. Joe Bates, said, Sam, there are lots and lots and lots of country doctors out there who live in little tiny towns, and they labor away in relative obscurity, and nobody even knows they exist, except for their patients and a few colleagues. So that occurred to me and a couple of us, and we created the Arkansas Physicians Oral History Project. And the Oral History Project, we went around the state. We identified towns of 2,500 to 5,000 and a doctor in each one of those towns. And we got them to let us interview. We went around and interviewed these guys. And it was just an absolute wonderful privilege and great thing. We're still working on it. We've done about 100 interviews total now. But of those, 45 of these guys ended up in the book, okay? When we started out to do this, we thought it would be all old white guys, like me, okay? In fact, that was our definition of old, was anybody who's older than me, okay? But it turned out that we did, a third of the people were old white guys, and a third were between 55 and 75, and a third were less than 55. What we found out as we did the interviews that we started seeing far more physicians of color and far more women, okay? And so this book, and this is the first book of this project. We're going to do several others. This first is pretty well profiles on these guys, but it also looks at the history of country doctors in Arkansas since 1803, 1804. And it was great fun, a great privilege to write. I'm working on 2 other projects right now. This book is available here in the library. You can get it at the Historic Garland County History Society. I'm working on 2 other books, about to finish one book called For Every Family, a Family Doctor. This is the 75th anniversary of the Arkansas Academy of Family Physicians. And so this summer, that book will be published. And I'm working on a 3rd book that I've got to take a little break, but soon, soon, called Against the Odds. And it's going to be women in medicine in Arkansas before 1972. Okay? You realize what the odds were against them being in medicine. Anyway, you can buy the book if anybody would like. I have my card is back here. I'm also working on a project called Tell Me Your Doctor Stories. And it's for anybody who has doctor stories. Call me, dictate them on your machine, on your computer, Apple or whatever, send them to me, and I'm going to put a book out called Tell Me Your Doctor Stories. Thank you.
All right, and last but not least, we have Millie Gore Lancaster.
I am Millie Gore Lancaster. I write under Professor Gore for children's work. In a tiny castle under a bright blue star lived King Philip the Good with his elegant husband, the most excellent, Don Carlos Emiliano Felipe de Compañero y Campañero. In the castle's belfry hung a sonorous bell, a great, commanding, and sonorous bell. Every morning, precisely at 6, Don Carlos tolled the bell to say, "Arise and shine, get out of bed, 'tis time to start the day." Arise and shine, get out of bed, 'tis time to start the day. Every evening, precisely at 8, he tolled the bell to say, "The kingdom is safe, all is well. The children sleep snug in their beds. The kingdom is safe, all is well. The children sleep snug in their beds. All is assuredly well, most assuredly well." And all was assuredly well for these two old husbands until until King Philip the Good got baby fever and wanted a baby. And he had to undergo the hero's journey in order to prove himself worthy as a father. So this is all as assuredly well. Out of the 10,000 books that Kirkus reviewed in 2018, most of them by the Big Four, Big Three, we won the top 100 books out of 10,000 books published in 2018. This is in part my response to Wichita Falls 23 years ago when they banned children's books in the public library. The other one is, I'm going to read you today, is my latest one, which is Short Stories for Arkansas Girls. It's 12 short stories set across the state. I'm going to read you a clip from the Einstein of Greater Garland County, which involves our bookmobile, but I'm not going to read that far. "My mom forgot to leave the key for me again," said Felicity, peering up at Mr. Geary from the bottom of the wooden steps, and then she frowned. "She needs a brain transplant." The mobile home park owner looked down at the 7th grader. He rolled his eyes and sighed loudly. "That sigh was impressive," said Felicity. "Did you know that people sigh about 12 times an hour? That a sigh fills your lungs approximately twice what a regular breath does? That it is governed by neuropeptides in your brainstem? That it signals tiredness, sadness, or relief? Are you tired, sad, or relieved?"
Thank you, Millie. I think you might have a career in narrating audiobooks. Okay, just making sure I'm not forgetting anyone. Are there any other authors that would like to speak before we shut it down? Okay, well, everyone, thank you very much for taking this opportunity and coming up here and being brave and showing your work. And we'll give you a few minutes if you want to exchange information, and then you can go eat. And yes, ma'am.
How would we be notified about when this is?
This was live streamed on Facebook and YouTube, so there were people watching it at home live. So as soon as we hit end, the broadcast is available on Garland County Library's Facebook and YouTube, and you can share that link with all of your fans and followers. Thank you.
Not this weekend.